Hello children. So we begin with the first chapter of section B of economics for standard 12, Indian economic development. That is, the chapter that we'll be dealing is Indian economy on the eve of independence. Children, studying these chapters, we will realize how far has the Indian economy achieved within a short span of 7 decades. So, when you as future citizens of India analyze economic growth, you need to first have an insight as to what was the state of the Indian economy when it was handed over to us by the colonial British rule. India's present economy is not of current making. It is not what the current government or the previous government has been formulating on the policies and implementing for years, but it has its roots steeped in history, especially when India was under the British rule, which lasted for almost 2 centuries before India finally won its independence on 15th August 1947. Children, the primary motive of the book is to make the young minds, that is the teenagers, to be able to analyze the state of Indian economy, the current economic scenario, and for this we need to have an idea as to how and in what state was India handed over to us in 1947 by the Britishers, so that we have a clear perspective of what we have achieved over the past 7 decades. What were the policies taken up by the Indian government after the independence to overcome the plight of the Indian economy, which was the consequence of the exploitative nature of the colonial government? Later, we will study how the economic policies were restructured in the year 1991 and its impact. Gradually, the focus of the book shifts on comparing Indian economy with the neighboring countries. Subsequently, we analyze the economic development as achieved by Pakistan and China and compare it with that of India. The sole purpose of comparison of Indian economy with its neighboring countries would be to know what went right with certain countries which grew faster than India and what went wrong in other countries. Children, you have been learning in history in the previous classes about the colonial rule in India, where the Mughals ruled India, later the Britishers who colonized India and ruled for almost 2 centuries. They came here as traders, but later established the East India Company and ruled India for 2 centuries. Children, the sole purpose of the British colonial rule in India was to reduce the country to being a raw material supplier for Great Britain's own rapidly expanding modern industrial base. The economic policies pursued by the colonial government in India were concerned with the protection and promotion of the economic interest of the home country than with the development of the Indian economy. An understanding of the exploitative nature of this relationship is essential for any kind of assessment and level of development which the Indian economy has been able to attain over the last 7 decades. So children, in this class, we will be learning about the Indian economy pre-British period, which will give you an idea about the prosperous economy that India had. Then we will shift to the various areas which witnessed low level of economic development, and then we shift our focus on specific sectors, that is agriculture sector, then industrial sector and the foreign sector. So children, let's first have an insight on how was the Indian economy prior to the British rule. India had an independent economy before the advent of the British rule. Agriculture was the main source of livelihood for most people. A French traveller, Bernier, described the 17th century Bengal, which reveals the prosperity in our country in the 17th century. As you can see on screen, a clipping which reads the richness and abundance of production agriculture sector had. We shall then compare India's agriculture at the time of independence around 200 years later, which will speak volumes in itself. Besides agriculture, the country's economy was characterized by various kinds of manufacturing activities too. India was well known for its handicraft industries in the field of cotton and silk textile, metal and precious stone work. These products enjoyed a worldwide market based on the reputation of the fine quality of material used and the highest standard of craftsmanship seen in all imports from India. For example, Dhaka muslin had gained worldwide fame as an explicit type of cotton textile, the finest variety of muslin, which was called malmal. It was called as malmal or malmal shahi as it was worn by the royals. Such was the state of Indian economy prior to British rule. The policies brought about by the Britishers brought a fundamental change in the structure of the Indian economy, transforming the country into supplier of raw materials and consumer of finished industry products from Britain. The colonial government was more concerned with the protection and promotion of economic interest of the home country. They never made any sincere attempt to estimate even India's national income and per capita income. Well, some individual attempts which were made to measure such income yielded conflicting and inconsistent results. Amongst the notable estimators, Dadabhai Naoroji, William Digby, Finlay Shiras, V.K.R.V. Rao and R.C. Desai. It was Rao, that is V.K.R.V. Rao, whose estimates during the colonial period was considered very significant. The country's growth of aggregate real output during the first half of the 20th century was less than 2%, which was coupled with a meager 0.5% growth in per capita output per year. Children, we will understand the exploitative nature of the British rule in India and its impact on the sectors individually. To begin with, we have the agricultural sector during the British rule. Indian agriculture was fundamentally agrarian. About 85% of the country's population lived in villages and worked in the agricultural sector. Agricultural productivity was low, though in absolute terms, that is, the overall productivity did increase. This sector experienced some growth due to the expansion of the aggregate area under cultivation. The various causes which led to the sorry state of the Indian agriculture were the various system of land settlements, that is, the Zamindari system, which was implemented in the then Bengal Presidency, comprising parts of India's present-day eastern states, where the profits earned in the agriculture sector went to the zamindars instead of the cultivators, who did nothing to improve the condition of agriculture. Their main interest was only to collect rent regardless of the economic condition of the cultivators, which caused immense misery and social tension amongst them. Now, who were these zamindars? Why did they behave in this manner? Children, it was because of the terms of revenue settlement where the zamindars were responsible to adopt such an attitude, where the dates for depositing specified sums of revenues were fixed, failing which the zamindars were to lose their rights. Thus, the zamindars had to adopt such strategy. Besides the land settlement, other factors which led to the stagnating agricultural condition during the British rules are low level of technology, lack of irrigation facilities and negligible use of fertilizers, commercialization of agriculture, where there was an increase in productivity, but this hardly improved the economic condition, because now instead of producing food crops, the farmers were producing cash crops, which would be used by the British industries back home. This led to starvation. Indian agriculture was starved of investment in terracing, flood control, drainage, desalinization of soil. The plight of large section of small farmers and sharecroppers was pathetic, as they had no incentive to invest in agriculture. What about the industrial sector? Did industrial sector prosper? Let's see. The policies pursued by the British was such that it did not develop a sound industrial base in India. In fact, the country's world-famous handicraft industries declined, without the modern industries taking up the pride of place so long enjoyed by the handicraft industry. So, why did the British government adopt such policy? What were the primary motives behind systematically deindustrializing India? The motive was twofold, as you can see on screen. First was to reduce India to the status of exporter of important raw material for their upcoming modern industries in Britain. Secondly, it was to turn India into a sprawling market for the finished products of those industries so that their continued expansion could be ensured to the maximum advantage of their home country. The impact of the motive was the indigenous handicraft industries created not only massive unemployment in India, but it led to a new demand in the Indian consumer market, which was now deprived of the supply of locally made goods. This demand was profitably met by the increasing import of cheap manufactured goods from Britain. Were modern industries established in India too? Let's see. Under the British Raj, modern industries saw only a bleak growth. It was only in the second half of the 19th century that the modern industries showed its emergence. In this regard, observations made were as follows. Development of industries was confined to the setting up of cotton and jute textile mills. The cotton textile mills, mainly dominated by Indians, were located in the western part of the country, namely Maharashtra and Gujarat, while the jute mills dominated by the foreigners were mainly concentrated in Bengal. The iron and steel industries began coming up in the beginning of the 20th century. The Tata Iron and Steel Company was incorporated in 1907. Few other industries in the field of sugar, cement, paper came up after the Second World War. Another drawback in the industrial sector was there were no capital good industries. Capital good industries are industries which can produce machines, tools, which in turn are used for producing articles for current consumption. In the absence of these industries, industrialization in India remained lopsided. The state participation in the process of modern industrialization was very limited. It was confined only to the area which would enlarge the size of the market for the British products in India. These areas included railways, power generation, development of ports and the means of communication, and some other departmental undertakings. Overall, in a nutshell, due to the displacement of the country's handicraft industries and bleak expansion of modern industries, the growth rate of the industrial sector and its contribution to the GDP remained very little. Taking a look at the foreign trade under the British rule, we understand that though India had acquired eminence in the area of foreign trade since ancient times, the British rule in India brought an end to it. India was a well-known exporter of finished goods, that is fine cotton, silk textile, goods, ivory work and precious stone. The British converted India into a net exporter of raw material and importer of finished goods. It was all due to the discriminatory policies of commodity production, trade and tariff pursued by the British government, which affected the structure, composition and volume of India's foreign trade. This led India in becoming an exporter of primary products such as raw, silk, cotton, wool, sugar, indigo, jute, etc. and an importer of finished consumer goods like cotton, silk and woolen cloth and capital goods like machinery produced in the factories of Britain. As per the restrictive policies of the colonial government, export and import of the country came under the monopoly control of the British government. This can be stated based on the following facts. That is, more than 50% of India's foreign trade was directed to Great Britain, and the rest was allowed with a few other countries like China, Sri Lanka and Persia. The foreign trade was also characterized by surplus trade, that is, export surplus. It exists when our exports exceeds import, which is a positive indicator for the domestic country because it denotes our earnings being more than our spending. But this was at a huge cost to the country's economy, as it led to a deep scarcity of essential commodities like food grain, clothes, kerosene, which was scarcely available in the domestic market. Thus, it, instead of making an advantage for the domestic country, created a disadvantage. This trade surplus could be intensified because of the opening of the Suez Canal in the year 1869, an artificial waterway which connects ports on the Mediterranean Sea with the Gulf of an arm of the Red Sea. This canal, as you can see on screen, provides a direct trade route for ships operating between Europe and Asia by doing away with the need to sail around Africa. Suez Canal was used as a highway between India and Britain. Strategically and economically, it is one of the most important waterways in the world, which reduced the cost of transportation and made access to the Indian market easier. Though export surplus is considered good for the economy, this export surplus did not result in any flow of gold or silver into India. Rather, this was used to make payments for expenses incurred for the offices set up by the colonial government in Britain. It was also used to meet their expenses on war fought by the Britishers and import of invisible items. To sum up, children, we have seen that the colonial rule in India led to agricultural stagnation, which means low productivity and high degree of uncertainty, widening gulf between owners, that is the zamindars, and the tillers of the soil. Looking at the state of industry and the British rule, Indian industry, which at one time enjoyed global reputation, suffered a systematic destruction during the British rule. It was largely due to the discriminatory policies of the British government. Growth of the modern industry was bleak. Capital good industries was almost non-existent. Process of industrialization remained lopsided, and the foreign trade under the British rule shifted from the export of finished goods to export of primary goods. It reveals the exploitative rule of the Britishers who colonized India to serve their home country by ruthlessly exploiting Indian economy. We will continue by looking into other sectors in our next class. Till then, take care. Goodbye.